I want to thank you so much for having me here today, Pastor Ben and Shauna. We really appreciate it. You know, when I was growing up, they said something about San Francisco that I wanted to share with you, and it only speaks to the miracle that's happening right now, which is they used to call San Francisco a graveyard for churches. I don't know, has anyone ever heard that? I heard about that, and my dad, let me put in context a little bit. My dad started a ministry in the inner city of San Francisco here in the Tenderloin district 29 years ago. My dad, quit his job. My mom quit her job. He actually had 2 jobs, so that's 3 jobs total. They dropped everything, went to the inner city. We used to show up at church with like no building, no nothing, and just like, what are we doing? And handing out sandwiches, preaching the good news to the poor, feeding people. That was 29 years ago. That's all I've known growing up, born and raised in San Francisco, Tenderloin district. And just growing up, they would always say, San Francisco is a graveyard for churches, a graveyard, and I was always wondering, what does that mean? And I didn't realize it, but man, there's never been a spiritual awakening or spiritual movement in the city before. And in fact, when I was growing up, if a pastor had a church of like 100, it was like, oh my gosh, that guy is a mega church pastor. Like, clear the room right now, everyone. But here I am, 31 years old in San Francisco, and the times have changed. God is moving. I've never experienced anything like this in my whole time being here in this city. I mean, and it just speaks to what God's doing here. And I always tell our staff, it's hard to recognize a miracle when you're in the middle of it. It really is. I mean, think about every time God moved in the Bible and there was a miracle that took place, it usually required 2 things. It usually required a lot of hard work, and it was usually done in monotony. I mean, we're hungry, Lord, manna. Oh my gosh, is there anything else to eat? It's always a grumbling and complaining. You have to pick it up and store it and all this kind of stuff. And that's what's happening right now, I believe, in San Francisco. And it's hard to know what's happening right now, but we are in the middle of a miracle. Just the fact that we're in a basement, and I think it's a brilliant idea to have church in a basement because then there's no cell phone reception. But, Ben, you're so smart, man. But to just be down here with believers worshiping 2 services, and I have friends that have planted churches here, and they're growing. All I have to say is I don't know what God's up to, but He's moving. We're right in the middle of it. It's hard to recognize it because it requires a lot of work, but I want to keep in step with the Spirit and make sure I don't miss the rest of what God's going to do in this city. 2 years ago, I was in the corporate world. I was happy. I was making the most money I've ever made in my life. My wife and I, we had this position that we were vying for. For 6 years, I was working toward this position, and we got it. 3 months into this position at this incredible company, God confronted me. And growing up, what are the worst 3 words you could ever hear? Can I talk to you? Can I talk to you? That's 5 words, by the way. Just wanted to make sure y'all pay attention. Can I talk to you? I remember being in school and getting a note, Mr. Langendorf wants to talk to you, principal. It's like, oh my gosh. Parents, when we get home, we need to talk. Wife, can we talk when we get, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, oh no. Those are like the worst words you can ever hear. And in a lot of ways, what God does through the Bible, that's why it's important to stay in it, is He is saying to us, hey, can I talk to you? But the thing about God, we really have to believe in the Bible and His disposition and who He is, His personality. God is love. And when the cool thing about God is when He confronts us and He says, can I talk to you? It's usually because He has something better for you. And I'm not preaching prosperity or anything like that. I'm just saying it's usually because He wants to confront you because He has something better in store for you, and He has maybe a better plan, and He usually confronts us when we need to be confronted. And so I wanted to share just this video of when God confronted me. This is what happened. It's 6 minutes, and we'll watch this together.
2 years ago, I received a phone call that just rocked my world.
So this is the Tenderloin. We're on Eddy Street right now. So you can see there's a police station right over here, and there's people selling drugs on that corner. And now I'm gonna show you where I grew up. I used to see a lot of girls prostitute themselves. I used to always ask my mom, what are them girls doing? They were young, but I was young at the time. She wouldn't tell me.
She was completely normal, had a great family, just in a poverty-stricken district where, man, literally 1 or 2 decisions later, you're caught up in the other side of the district.
I wanted to be a nurse, and I always remember not wanting to ever get beat up by a guy, because my uncle used to beat up on my aunt in front of us, so I never wanted to go through that. My name's Anna, and this is where I grew up. I came here when I was 7 years old. It was kind of rough living here, as you can see. It's a rough neighborhood. Brings back a lot of memories. Growing up in the Tenderloin was kind of scary. The only place I felt safe was coming to church. I remember growing up meeting Chris because he used to do youth outreach, and he knocked on my door and invited me to a program.
We'd known her for a good 7, 8 years. You would never think that this would be the story of Anna.
I started hanging around with a different type of people and basically bad influence. I remember meeting her. Her name was Never, and a second girl named Amanda. She offered me a place to stay. It was just going to be a place where I can sleep and be safe, and I believed her. They had a plan for me. I guess I was going to be their project.
I just asked a simple question. I was like, Anna, what's up? Where have you been? And that's when she went on a 2-hour story of how she was actually trafficked.
I was introduced to this man named Rome. Since that day, he never left me, never left my side. I had no idea of the trap. He will make me use crystal meth with him and make me do things I didn't want to do. They kind of tricked me into having sex with a stranger, and they had everything ready in the room. The guy knew that it was my first time. He just said, go in there and do what you are told. Get the money and come out. If you try to leave, I'm gonna kill you. I remember just getting beat up damn near every day for anything. I was forced to be out there. I wasn't allowed to come home if I didn't have at least $500 or $600 a day. All you hear at night, your heels like tick, 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 so you gotta run from everybody. You just gotta run. Tortured me for 2 days and just had me in a room. He said if I left that room alive, I was gonna be lucky. He locked me in a closet, butt naked, and would go in there and torture me. Put a mirror in front of me so I can look at myself while I was getting beat up. He was gonna go get some more drugs so we could have makeup sex. The housekeeper came in. She knocked on my door and she just looked at me and she said, you need to call somebody to come pick you up. I was just beat up from head to toe, and it was just horrible.
I did have one question. I said, Anna, I want to know where this takes place. I want to know where in the city, because I love the city. I was born in the city, and I just can't picture that type of stuff happening here. And when she gave me the address, it was about 3 or 4 blocks from City Impact. When my wife and I went to bed that night, we just felt like it was a defining moment in our life. We're either going to ignore what we just heard, make ourselves numb to it, or we have to do something. The majority of the injustice in Anna's story happened behind closed doors, really convicted us about what's happening in these apartment buildings. That's what burdened us ultimately, was who is going door to door and who's going to shine the light in the dark place and identify the injustice and execute justice. And so out of those talks, we just came up with the initiative called Adopt a Building. I truly believe we could flip a district around. I know it sounds crazy, I know it sounds childlike to imagine something like that, but we have seen it already take place, and so it's just a matter of scale. Why? Because we're supposed to love our neighbor. That's it. It's really as simple as that.
Anybody could have knocked on my door and just asked me if I'm okay, if I need help. What I think City Impact is doing, it's really positive for the community, is they knock on people's door, intervene in their life. God's trying to use me to save others that are in my same situation. It's gonna take a minute, but I know that God has a plan for me, and that's why I'm here.
That was the phone call that changed kind of the course of my life. And over the last 2 years, we've come back to City Impact and have just planted ourselves in the Tenderloin and have dug deep and have worked extremely hard at just going door to door. And we've adopted 20 buildings. And we're mobilizing 153 volunteers every single week. And these are not sporadic volunteers. These are people that live in the city. Who have said, you know what, the Tenderloin, these are my neighbors, and I should care for them and love them. And my job today, though, is not to just tell you about City Impact. I want to challenge you as a believer. I believe the encounter that I had is the same, encounter that Job had when God said, hey, would you brace yourself? I want to talk to you. Or it's this, just encounters like in Haggai in chapter 1, verses 1 through 11, where God calls his people and he says, hey, I want to talk to you for a second. I have something I want to say. My house is lying in ruins, and you're spending all your resource and time and energy building your own homes. And he says, I just have a question for you. Like, are you satisfied? Like, are you happy? And read, I love Haggai chapter 1, verse 1 through 11, because it's God frustrating his people to the point where they acknowledge him and say, God, what are you up to? Because obviously my life makes no sense right now. And then God says, put my kingdom and my work first. And that's what he says. He says, you make money, but you put it in a purse with a hole in it. You eat, but you're not even full. You drink, but you're not satisfied. I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you. Put my kingdom first. Build my house. Don't just build your nice homes with your nice panels and flat screens. I think God said that in the Old Testament. I'm pretty sure. He's like, look, my house is important to me. I have urgency. There's things I want to get done. And today, my job is to be that messenger and tell you in your life, I don't know where you are or what you do, but God's message to this church today is, hey, are you satisfied? Are you happy? And even if you are, challenge you even further to put his kingdom and his business first. And so I want to talk to you about leveraging your life for the benefit of others. Leveraging your life for the benefit of others. And what does leveraging look like? Well, I come from a sales background. I was in the corporate world and was working sales. And I remember a time where we were competing for one position. It was between me and this girl. And at the time, I really needed to secure this position. And so I told my wife, I was like, babe, if we can get this right here, I think we're set. And she, it's amazing when a woman is behind a man and fully supportive. And you know what women want men? Security. And they want you to lead spiritually. And that's why I was able to secure a fine wife, because I've been able to secure her and lead her spiritually. This is my wife, by the way. Would you just raise your hand? Or, yes, there she is. Yes, I love you. It's amazing when we needed this position, how we never had talks about family time, boundaries, you're working too hard. Why? Because we needed something. And that is how we must treat God's work. We must put it as first priority, to the point where both husband and wife say, you know what? We must leverage everything that we have for God's kingdom and God's work. And I remember competing for this one position, and it came down to this one project where we had to reach out to 300 or 400 clients. And I just remember leveraging everything that I've learned at City Impact, about mass mailings, and I bribed 2 medical assistants to help me with this mass mailing. We had 5 days to reach out to 300 to 400 clients. And I said, hey, I'll buy you Starbucks if you help me for 2 hours. And so, boom, I got 2 workers in there. We laid out all the letters, all the envelopes, all the labels. And I was teaching them how to roll the labels so that, and just boom, 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 boom. We finished our project in a day and a half. And when we got on the sales call, she goes, I want updates on everyone's project. And I was, we went all around and everyone was giving a report to the manager. And I said, I'm done. And, it's just a couple weeks after that they gave me the position. Leveraging your life. Something is important, you reprioritize everything in pursuit of it. And in God's kingdom, we must live like that as believers. I want to read my favorite parable to you. It's in Luke chapter 16, verse 1 through 8. And this is what it says. This is the greatest parable, I think. It's so amazing, and it speaks to our lives. There was a rich man whose manager was accused of wasting his possessions. So he called him and asked him, hey, what's this I hear about you? Give an account of your management, because you cannot be my manager anymore. The manager said to himself, oh, what should I do now? My master's going to take away my job. I'm not strong enough to dig ditches, and I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do so that when I lose my job here, people will welcome me into their houses. So he called in each one of the master's debtors, and he asked the first one, how much do you owe my master? 800 gallons of olive oil, he replied. The manager told him, take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 400. Then he asked the second, and how much do you owe? 1,000 bushels of wheat, he replied. He told him, take your bill, make it 800. The master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of this light. I love that story because that story is about us. Here's God in heaven. He is the owner. We are here on earth as managers of everything He has lent us. I'm telling you, everything you have, from relationships to occupation to everything. Everything He has given you is on loan from God, and you are just supposed to manage it. Okay? Now, if we are smart and we are shrewd, we'll read this parable and realize that one day we're going to give an account to God. Either we're going to die, we got 80 years on this earth, for lucky 90, or maybe if you're not lucky, I don't know, it depends on how you view life. But we're either going to die, 80 years we got on this earth, or Jesus is going to come back and we're going to settle accounts. And if we are smart, we will realize this. Before we give an account to God Himself of everything that He has lent us, we will say, how can I leverage everything that God has given me for the benefit of others, so that when I stand before Him, I can say, God, I knew you were going to call me to an account, so I just wanted to let you know that on my weekends, instead of just like playing soccer at the Marina Green, I was doing this. And He would say, man, you are so shrewd. Why would you spend all that time? When I look at Kyle right here, Kyle, right? Okay, because I said Kyle and there was no reaction. I just wanted to make sure. When I look at Kyle, who goes to Epic Church here, I see him almost every single Sunday. Right after church, he comes over to the Tenderloin and he knocks on doors in the Ambassador Hotel and he intervenes in people's lives. And I think to myself, man, how smart is this young man? Because at the end of his life, he'll be able to say, God, I sat at church, yes. I listened to Pastor Ben, yes. I applied the teaching, yes. But Lord, after that, I went out and I evangelized and I did outreach in one of the most poverty-stricken districts on the West Coast. God, I just try to be a good manager of the resources and time that you've given me. I truly believe when God looks at people who activate their faith and leverage their life for the benefit of others, I think God gets happy. I think God says, man, that guy, even if we are a dishonest rascal, as it says in the New Living Translation, or even if we are a dishonest manager, he has to commend us and say, man, that was smart. That's what leveraging our life looks like. But I want to challenge us with three things. The first step in leveraging your life for the benefit of others, first of all, we have to be moved by something. We have to be moved by injustice. I have a firm belief that if we're not moved, we won't do anything. I truly believe this. And you think about Moses, how was it possible for a prince? Moses was a prince in Egypt. He had everything. Everything, position, authority, influence. I mean, everything. He was he was the prince of Egypt. Why did he forsake all of that? To go out into a desert for 40 years and build a relationship with God, another 40 years wandering, just like trouble. Why did he do all that? Because something moved him. His people were oppressed. And because he was moved, he got involved and intervened. And ultimately, he went on the run and he liberated a whole group of people. Think about Esther. Think about Mordecai, Nehemiah, all these great men and women in the Bible. What got them to be incredible men and women of the Bible was that the fact that they were moved by something. When Nehemiah realized that the walls were not built and the temple was not built, it destroyed him. In fact, in Nehemiah 2, he said, I went before the king and I was sad. And the Bible says there very clearly, in Nehemiah 2, read it, it says, I had never been sad in the king's presence before. He was moved. He was moved to the point where he was sad, to the point where his face showed it, to the point where the king says, Nehemiah, what's wrong with you? I've never seen you sad before. Why are you sad? And he goes, I can't do this anymore. I can't stay here in luxury while my people are in ruins and everywhere. I got to do something. And the king says, okay, you have my full permission and I'm going to back you. We have to be moved though. And what I like to challenge people with is this. What moves you? Does anything move you? You know, when I was reading Nehemiah 2 about how he had never been sad in the king's presence before, I immediately thought of the sentence that drama queens aren't afforded the same opportunities as those who reserve their emotions for the things of God. I firmly believe that. If you cry about everything, then nothing moves you. I put it this way, as believers, we have a Heavenly Father that loves us, and He promised in Matthew 6 that He will take care of us. He actually commands us, do not worry. So when we freak out, like the world freaks out, they look at us and say, what kind of God do you serve? You have the same amount of problems as I do. We are commanded not to worry. And in fact, it is disrespectful to worry about where to sleep and what to eat and what to wear. Specifically in the Bible, Jesus says, don't worry about those things. So if we are crying about everything like, oh my God, I don't know if you're going to take care of me. I don't know what I'm going to wear. I don't know what I'm going to eat. Let me tell you something. Listen, I have never gone without a meal unless it was intentional for a fast. Listen, I'm telling you, I was even laid off one time. God took care of me. I had plenty of food to eat. Let's not freak out, church. Let's reserve our emotions, right? Let's not worry about the things of the world. Let's reserve our emotions for something that moves us. Like when I heard Anna's story, it just broke me. It broke me. And she came to my office 2 months ago, and she sat in my office. She was weeping, and she says, if someone would have just knocked, that fires me up, church. I won't say who it is in my family, but a family member. The only time I've ever seen him cry was when he saw the Giants win the World Series. And I thought to myself, I said, well, now I know you have a heart and something moves you, But the goal of us as believers is to reserve those tears and emotions for the things that matter to God. And what matters to God, you want to know what God's business is in His kingdom and what moves Him? Luke 4. It's Jesus' mission statement. He literally stand up and said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to preach the good news to the poor, to bind up the brokenhearted, to set free the captives, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor to those in bondage. The people that God loves and he has a bent towards are those that are oppressed, the hungry, the orphan, the widow. A lot of times we focus on the to-dos of ministry, like, hey, I got to preach, I want to visit, I want to, whatever's in Luke 4 there. But not realizing that it's the who of Luke 4 that God has a heart for. And we have to reserve our emotions for them. I liken it to the different cries in my household. I got an 8-year-old boy, I got a 2-year-old girl. I have 3 kids, actually, so 8, 4, both boys, 2-year-old girl. I was a brilliant parent when I had 2 boys. I mean, people couldn't understand how awesome I was. Like, dang, your boys are so well behaved, man. They're handsome, clean. And then the girl came, and we just lost control. And we're trying to find like parenting books online, everything. So, pray for us. 2-year-old girl, she cries about everything, everything. I mean, you want to sit here, cry. Okay, here, cry. Here, cry. You want this to eat, cry. It's just like, we have come to the point where it's just background noise now. So like, every time she cries, it's just like, it doesn't move us. It's just like, that's just Maya. That's Maya. My 8-year-old boy, he rarely cries. And when he cries big tears, and it's hard. And so when he cries, you better believe my wife and I, we drop everything. What's going on? What happened with Malachi? And I liken that to when God is giving an assessment of believers and he says, man, who can I use? Oh man, these guys are, man, nothing really moves them. I got to find, okay, these 2 guys, this woman. And I truly believe that. The second step in leveraging your life for the benefit of others is to take on responsibility that's not even yours. Jesus talks about 2 types of people, 2 types of believers. A good shepherd and a hired hand. I don't know much about shepherding or sheep and all that. I was born and raised in San Francisco. I could tell you a lot about, never mind, we won't tell you about that. But shepherding, Jesus likens it to a good shepherd and a hired hand. He basically says this: if there are a group of sheep and a wolf shows up, a good shepherd is going to lay down his life, get in the middle of the wolf and the sheep with his rod and say, bring it on. Let's do this. I got to protect these sheep. These are my sheep. I own them. I'm a good shepherd. Come on. Think about the best king Israel ever had, David. He did the exact same thing. When a lion tried to take his sheep, he killed the lion. When a bear tried to kill his sheep, he killed the bear. That's why God used him as a shepherd over Israel. He goes, that boy has the same heart as me. That's exactly what God did for us. We're a bunch of sheep. The enemy's roaring around like a lion trying to devour us, steal, kill, and destroy our lives. And Jesus says, I'm a good shepherd. I'm going to lay down my life. He got in between Satan and us, and he said, bring it on. He died on the cross, and he saved us. Now, as believers, we must live as Jesus lived. A good shepherd will look at the injustice of our city and say, you know what? That's my responsibility. These people, instead of them frustrating me, when you read the news, a good determinant of where your heart is if you read the news and you're just frustrated, you're not moved yet. If you read the news and you weep and you say, Lord, use me to fix this, you're ready. A good shepherd will lay down his life for the sheep. A hired hand, however, this is how he describes a hired hand. A hired hand, he looks at the sheep, he looks at the wolf, and he goes, they're not mine anyway. I'm taking off. And that's very much how we must gauge our life as believers. Are we leveraging our life for the benefit of others? If so, it usually means we're taking on responsibility that's not even ours. A couple months ago, I was driving down Eddy Street, and I saw this man. I was with my little friend. He's a little Korean guy, and we're driving his little Prius. And I'm driving. I'm a Chinese guy, but I'm bigger because I'm half French. And so it's just me and this little guy, and we're just driving down his Prius. I never, it's just driving down, and all of a sudden, this man forcibly grabs this woman by the elbow. And they start walking across the street. I'm like, man, this doesn't look right. You kind of just get your antennas up. You're like, this does not look right. And all of a sudden, a manager of a building opens up the gate, and they go inside the apartment building. And, I just had this feeling like, that does not look right. I need to do something. I looked at my friend and I was like, he ain't gonna do much, you know. And so I just drove away. And I went back to City Impact and just continued to work. That night, I could not sleep at all. My wife's like, you have like serious sleeping problems. And I'm like, I know. But all night, what bothered me most was the fact that I was a coward. Because I'm always telling my boys, like, you got to trust Jesus. Jesus never, nothing's ever happened to us in the Tenderloin. Over 29 years, nothing's ever happened to us. You got to be strong. And the fact was, I was a coward, and it bothered me. So I woke up at 5 a.m. to check emails. There was an email from a volunteer from Reality Church. It's a young lady. She goes, I'm concerned about a woman that I met who's being held against her will. And she gave me the address. And it was the exact same building the man took the woman into the day before. In less than 8 hours, I saw something, I read something, and 3 to 4 hours later, Josh can tell you, I emailed our adopted building staff. I said, gather the guys. We're going to pray, we're going to read, we're going to fill up, we're going to go. We're going to execute justice in this building. We have to adopt it. We're already tapped out. We don't have enough resources. We don't have enough volunteers. We don't have enough time. I have too much on my plate. It does not matter, though, because if we're going to leverage our life for the benefit of others, we're going to take on even more responsibility that's surely not even ours. We went in there. I can't even begin to tell you. I've been in the Tenderloin for my whole life. This is the worst building I've ever been in. The amount of brokenness. We found 14 transvestites. We found the woman who is being held against her will. There's a prostitution ring. There are 4 gangsters that terrorize the whole building. They've intimidated the management. The management has nothing. They don't even know what to do because these 4 gangsters terrorize the whole building. And the day before we arrived, a 20-year-old girl gave birth to a baby in the hallway with a drug dealer delivering it. The baby's still in critical condition. This is happening 5 minutes away from where your church meets. And all I'm saying is, as believers, if we want to see a move of God, we will get to the point where something will move us and cause us to take on more responsibility than what we have currently. And I know that Lindsay and Ben have a ton of projects that your church is getting involved with, but I'm just here to challenge you. Pray that God would first just move your heart. Say, Lord, break my heart for something. If it's sex trafficking, if it's, these kids in the foster care system, if it's homelessness, do something. Because God's heart is for these people. And if we're smart with our life, we won't spend our life on ourselves and just who we love in our immediate family. Will leverage everything. If we're smart and shrewd, like Luke 16, before we give an account, we will give it all for others. So that when we stand before Him, we say, God, I know I wasn't the best husband, I wasn't the best father, I may not have been the best worker in my place, but God, I did everything. I used everything. As I was preparing this message, I know one thing that God wanted me to share with you guys is the knee-jerk reaction isn't to just quit your job and go to the Tenderloin. If we all did that, we'd all be broke and we'd do nothing. We'd shut down next month. I mean, we still knock on doors. We just can't offer help. Just like, hey, I'm not busy. You're busy? Okay. But I believe for Epic Church, I believe this is for someone here, but to stay in your lane. I've known pastors who had the attitude that they're doing God a favor by staying in ministry. Because they knew, hey man, I'm doing God a favor by staying, it's almost like they're suffering by being a pastor because if it wasn't for God's calling, they'd be out there in the business world killing it and they'd be a millionaire by now. And there's businessmen in the church that sit in the back row with their arms folded and they look at the pastor and they critique the pastor and they say, man, if I was the pastor, I'd run this thing a lot better. So we have pastors that want to be businessmen. We got businessmen that want to be pastors. We got athletes that want to be rappers. We got rappers that want to be athletes. It's like, stop. Everyone, please. Stay in your lane because God likens us to a body. And we all need to play our part. And the moment you stop playing your part and executing your role, the body stops functioning. I'm called to the TL. We got a bunch of soldiers that are called to the TL. And I call them soldiers intentionally because, man, they are warriors. But not everyone is called to do that. Evidenced by some staff that come, they're gone in a year. It's not for everyone. But I tell you what, that's our calling. That's our part in the body. I can't do what Pastor Ben does and build a church and church plant. That's his part in the body. And I'm here to challenge you. I don't know where you're at or what your occupation is, but stay in your lane. God's not asking you to quit your thing. God's asking you to use your thing to leverage it for others. You're gonna reach people I can't reach. You're going to talk to people I can't talk to. I could flip a switch and talk Ebonics and go to the TL and it's all good. That's my language that I've had to learn, But you know the business language. You know the corporate world. You're an incredible mom. You moms, I'm telling you. Someone needs to save those soccer moms. Come on, I'm just kidding. But it's another world, We need you moms. You don't have to feel the weight of, man, I got these kids, but I feel like ministry. No. The kids are the ministry. And not only that, but I'm telling you, set up a couple play dates. Leverage everything, even play dates, to save another mom. Leverage everything for the kingdom. Oh, shoot. I'm out of time. I didn't realize that. I was having so much fun up here. I'll just say this last thing. I'll skip my third point. But I will instead just beg the question, can you imagine what would have happened if all these great men and women in the Bible decided to just take God's blessing and have an entitlement attitude and say, you know what? Like Joseph, for example, sold into slavery. He was falsely accused. He was falsely imprisoned. He finally gets a position of authority and blessing, second in command. Can you imagine if Joseph said to himself, finally, I can relax. I've been through a lot in life. Now it's my time to just relax. Can you imagine if he had that attitude? His whole nation would have died because of a famine. God does not bless us so that we can stay comfortable. God blesses us and promotes us and lifts us up and lends us resources so that we can save others. Can you imagine if Esther had that same attitude? Esther became the queen. But can you imagine? I just like this position here. No, she put her life at risk. She goes, whether I die, whether I live, I'm going into the king and I'm going to ask him to save my people. She leveraged her position to save people. Jesus, he's the ultimate man to follow. I don't know any other person. I will not follow a man. I will not follow anyone but Jesus. I'm telling you, I'll submit myself under authority, spiritual authority, but I'm telling you, there's no one as far as gods out there. There is no other God like Jesus because he had everything, and yet he counted it as nothing and said, I'm going to give it all. And he came down and he died for us. Can you imagine, though, if Jesus was like, no, I kind of like the worship from the angels. I'm going to stay up here. We would be lost. And so my challenge to this church is to be like Jesus. We've been blessed. Man, I'm telling you guys, we are so blessed. If you can think, if you have intellect, if you can string a sentence together, I'm telling you, if you can... It's a lot more than some of my friends in the Tenderloin. There's so many mentally ill. There's so many people that are demon-possessed. There's so many people that are in trauma right now. Man, we have 120 school kids in our school. And the amount of trauma that we hear that they live through, like they go home from school and they live in trauma. And I think to myself, God, we are so blessed. Why? It begs the question, why? Why us, not them? It's so that we can turn back around to them and bless them and leverage our life for them, preach the good news to them. The ushers will give you a little more information about City Impact, but I'm going to give it over to Ben now to wrap it up.
Friends, there's nothing greater in all the world than understanding the reason that God put you here in this place for such a time as this. That's what we've been talking about all series. Christian's got his thing. Wouldn't you love to be as passionate about your thing? Your thing probably isn't his thing. Your thing probably isn't my thing. But God's given you a thing. How are you going to leverage it? You guys know right now, if you were here last week, we kicked off the Hope Project. If you need a packet, grab one before you leave. But we're going to, as a church that hasn't hit our third birthday yet, we're going to leverage what we've been given by giving $80,000 outside of this church. We're going to continue to build. We're going to build a school in Uganda to intervene. We're going to give $10,000 to City Impact to intervene. We're going to give $7,500 to Because Justice Matters to change the sex trafficking industry. We're going to do these things. We're going to continue to leverage the school that's very poor. Right here in Soma, Bessie Carmichael, where we've been involved since day one, we're going to do this. We're going to bless a woman's place. We're going to give them Christmas bags. Again, not filled with Amazon gift cards, but filled with toiletries that they might have something when they take a shower. We're going to do that. We're going to help get churches started, just like 20 churches got Epic started. And the question for you is this, not is God going to do his thing, but are you going to be a part? It's always the question. You don't look at God's resume and go, I just don't know if he can handle it. But sometimes you look at yourself in the mirror. I look at myself, I've got all this stuff to be so self-consumed with. But the question to us is, he's doing his thing. Do you want to be a part of it? Do not think that God had to use Moses to do the thing with the slaves in Egypt, or Esther or Joseph. He's doing his thing, and as best we can, not perfectly ever, we're going to jump on the train. Okay? So would you pray with me? I'm going to ask the band to come lead us in a song, because all of this is not rooted in good deeds, okay? It is not like, hey, this is good deeds central at Epic. We do good deeds because Jesus has done something far beyond a deed. He has laid it all out for us so that we might be reconciled to the God that we've sinned against. Even this week, you and I, we failed him, but yet Jesus comes and he has his body broken, his blood poured out for us that we might stand before God reconciled. Some of you need to know that for the first time. We're doing good deeds. Why? Because of what Jesus has done for us. This is the kind of God he is. He doesn't come to be served. He comes to serve. He comes to give his life as a ransom for many. And I don't know about you, but there's some things I need to reconsider after listening twice now this morning. You only had to hear it once, but I've had to sit through that convicting talk twice. And the question I want to ask is, you think about how you're going to get on board, whether it's offering or helping out with adoptability or whatever it may be, you going to Uganda, whatever it may be, your neighbors, whatever it may be. I just want to ask us two questions. What are the things in our lives that we're giving an inordinate amount of time, focus, and resources to that just aren't that significant? And then what are the significant things that we're not giving but need to start giving an inordinate amount of time, attention, and focus to? I've got my list and you've got yours. We can continue to be self-absorbed, or we can realize that God's going to take care of us and then he's going to use us to take care of this world. You're not here by accident. You're not here for self. Okay, let's jump on this. God, I pray that you would, in these moments, as we're sitting under, for me, God, just the sense of, wow. God, I know that for me, I give way too much time, way too much significance to things that aren't that significant. Way too much time wondering about how people perceive me or how I'm being taken care of or how good of a husband I'm being. And God, those things can be okay. But God, what I want to do, as we say around here all the time, God, I want to leverage whatever years on this earth you give me for the sake of what's going to be happening for all eternity. God, we don't have to ask, as we've heard this morning, is your heart towards something like this? Should we do something about this? God, you have put this as a call for every one of us, God, to be involved in some way. God, you've given us spiritual gifts. You've given us intellect. You've given us money. You've given us time. You've given us a neighborhood to live in, a city to call home. And so, God, this is our place. God, show us what you've given us and what we are to do with it. God, I thank you that you haven't given up on us. And so for the people in the room who've only lived for self their entire lives, God, it's not too late. God, may we see the grace of Jesus and then may we distribute it. And now, God, we just want to sing about the great mystery that the Christ who didn't know us anything bled out for us, body crushed for us, him getting what we deserve so that we might get what he deserves, which is this righteous, right relationship with you, Lord. Everything's changed. Thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. Let's stand and let's respond.